Do you remember the times when phones used to be unique and genuinely interesting? Like an era or two ago? I do, and I sort of miss those times. Now, pretty much any phone will be good or good enough, and that's fine, but most of them just miss that thing, which was only specific to that brand. Today, I want to show you a phone which I absolutely would have loved to have 5 years ago when it was launched. That's 2020, by the way. And that phone is a Sony. Let's begin. The culprit in discussion is this Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. For those of you who don't know, Sony used to be quite an interesting brand back in the days. They never had a huge market share. Matter of fact, back in 2010, when Nokia was the boss, they were at around 7% globally, which is still decent by all means, and that made them continue their smartphones line. When Android started to rise and compete with Apple, all manufacturers were basically integrating the OS into their lineup, and Sony was no exception. And damn, their phones were amazing. Their Xperia lineup was beautiful and generally good. You had a lot of options and a lot of niche products. I mean, just look at this and tell me you don't like it. However, Sony were also quite strict when it came to their approach, and the phones were great and unique, but something was missing, and that's the software. I own a Sony Xperia XZ2 and I liked it, but the optimization was the worst. And unfortunately, that was happening in an era when the software was starting to be more and more important. But all in all, they kept going and kept producing their flagships, at least. They still have some middle-range smartphones here and there, but not really relevant to the discussion. Starting with the Sony Xperia 1, they are now slowly aligning with the standards, which is both good and bad. The Xperia 1 Mark II is one of the many examples of how Sony are trying to stand out, and well, I can see why some people might not be into it. First things first, and the most obvious thing, the screen. We talk about a 4K screen. You heard that well. It's not that normal 4K that you are thinking about, because this has a 21:9 aspect ratio. Cinema, baby. That makes the resolution a bit odd. 1644 by 3840. Apple says hello. And a whooping 643 pixels per inch. 6.5 inches, and I believe that is insane. And what's even more insane is that this is not their first 4K phone. The Xperia Z5 Premium, launched back in 2015, like 3 eras ago, was having a pure 2160 by 3840 pixels, 16:9, 5.5 inches screen, 806 pixels per inch. And it was incredible at that time, but unfortunately, people did not seem to care that much. And that applies for our days as well. This 21:9 aspect ratio is not the most popular, is way too long and generally looks weird. I personally like it because I can actually reach the other end of the screen without hand gymnastics, and apart from that, it's OLED, HDR and 60Hz refresh rate. So pretty simple and basic. That was pretty much the standard back then for a flagship, apart from the fact that some manufacturers were already integrating 120Hz refresh rates on their phones. Good chip, good materials, the software is well optimized now. I've used it for a few days and had absolutely no issues. Fingerprint mounted on the lock button, yada yada yada. Not really important for this video, really. However, what I want to show you today is something a bit more special to me. I'm a Sony camera user for quite some years now, and that special thing is represented by the cameras on this phone. I watched a lot of reviews when this came out because it has two interesting apps that you can use: Camera Pro and Movie Pro. Basically, you can control every camera settings and even take photos in RAW format, a thing which wasn't really popular at that time. The most interesting thing here, though, is the apps interfaces, which look like a Sony camera interface. And I love it. It was easy for me to instantly use it as I'm familiar with it, but even if someone is not, it is generally easy and intuitive. And no, it's not the first time when we see this kind of approach, but this one was the best, and I tend to believe that it still is. Maybe the Blackmagic camera app is up there with it, but that's pretty much it, at least for me. And the photos were looking even great, or stunning, even in auto mode, something which people had a lot of things to say about in 2020, but I noticed that it tries to soften things up, which is pretty much the opposite of the other phones, but that's no biggie if you ask me. The dynamic range is great, the colors are pretty neutral in general, and if you shoot RAW, you actually have a lot of space to correct and colorize and do whatever you want to. I'm surprised because I remember people saying that cameras on auto mode, specifically auto mode, was bad compared with the likes of Samsung and Apple. And maybe, or well, surely it wasn't as good, but it was good enough for a flagship. And it goes the same way for the telephoto and the ultra-wide cameras. In an era where these two focals were mostly neglected, the Xperia 1 Mark II was doing quite a good job with them. The video quality was pretty average, I gotta say this, but again, it's 2020 and the only company that was doing a good job on this end was Apple, really. That's it. It's the year when the 11 Pro was the best and then the 12 series came out. Hard to compete with them. They had a lot of expertise in this field. I mean, even nowadays, Apple still takes the best videos, and no, average doesn't necessarily mean bad. It was okay, decent stabilization, the same neutral colors. The only thing missing, really, is some 10-bit HDR recording. That's it. And I believe they could have somehow fit that in there, but I'm not entirely sure. And if you like what we do here, we will increase the quality of our own videos, and like that, we hope that we can get a subscribe and a like from you. Oh, and I forgot to mention that it has a camera shutter button on the side. Well placed, because if you want to use it, you should really have your phone in landscape mode. I'm looking at you, Apple. Now, I do understand that this kind of phone is more of a niche phone, but I beg to differ. You get the best chip in that specific time frame, a good screen, 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM, big and fast storage, 256 gigabytes, a good looking and slim phone. What I mean is that it does not really compromise on the most important ends for the sake of cameras. You get pretty much the commercially stock Android, and trust me, you prefer that over the likes of Samsung or any other brand's UI. Now, it wasn't perfect, obviously, 60Hz screen, slow charging, and for some people, well, for a lot of people, the long screen. Nowadays, even their flagship, the Xperia 1 Mark VI, has a 19.5:9 aspect ratio. So if you want to check that out, I actually recommend it. Also, I would love to get more phones like this. Unique and interesting. Let me know if you like this format and if I should carry on with it. I got a lot of phones I want to look at, so yeah, this might work out for us. Meanwhile, you let me know, what is that phone that you miss and would love to see as a new variant or a new interpretation with today's technology? Also, if you owned this Sony or a phone like it, how was it working for you? Let me know down below in the comment section. That's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If yes, a subscribe and a like would be more than appreciated. I'll see you guys with the next video. Bye bye.